This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, welcome everyone to part 3, Titanic. So we're almost there. We're almost up to the actual Torah connection of the Titanic. But one more point of interest was the participation of a very wealthy philanthropist by the name of Nathan Strauss, or shall we say, the lack thereof. It's reported over here, so we're on the second handout sheet. Ha-Yehudi ha-mefursam b'yoyser shenitza me'haflaga b'aniyah haya Mar Natan Strauss. Nathan Strauss was probably the what?
Abraham and Strauss?
No, that's something. Abraham was another name.
A different guy.
No. This is the Strauss.
No.
Strauss part of Abraham and Strauss. The Strauss.
Yeah, but
That's
Nathan Strauss was a man.
Okay. Now, Michtav Bahul Higia mi Berlin Biyom, 25th of April, Ma'areches Iton Ha'ar. A very bewildered letter arrived from Berlin on the 25th day of April in the newspaper Ha'ar. Shatas Haisal Iton Shedish Nezaz V'Ishtoi Tavu. At first it was reported that Nathan Strauss drowned in the Titanic. But then another letter came, Lo Chen Hadavar. It wasn't him. Nathan Strauss did not drown. We mentioned it was his brother Isidore. Ella Achiv Isidore. V'hu madgish. Gam mosam shalela hu ma'ura agam u'matziv. Not that makes things better. In other words, we're not happy about the fact that Isidore went, but ach einhu yachlifol aleinu pu'ula miuchedas b'mina. But thank God it wasn't Nathan. Okay, so let's talk about who are these people. Nathan Haya ben Shlisha Laser Strauss. Nathan was the third child of Laser Strauss. He was born in Ottenburg in Germany. Okay, he was born, Bishnas 1854, Higra HaMishpach America. They emigrated in 1854, Chavor Asar, Hisyashiv in New York. Then they ultimately resided in New York. Shamikima Esek Livo Charsina. Be'iske HaMishpacha Shigshigu. So at first they had a business, it faltered. However, as time passed, they were very successful. In 1888, Nathan, Isidore were partners in Bereshes Chaniyos Macy's. Okay? Not a Macy's, Sumadiach, but they were partners in Reshes Chanuyos. You know Reshes Chanuyos are? Chain of stores. I'm not sure if you're learning any Torah today, but maybe you'll learn some Lashon HaKodesh. Okay. Hu ve'ishta Lina, him and his wife Lina, asku b'nadvanus v'askanas yudus v'chalas. They are very involved in many Jewish philanthropy causes. Okay. So, the amazing thing, we're talking about the beginning of the 20th century, talking about wealthy Jews. Would they have any connection with Israel? Incredibly, Strauss, Bikul B'Shnas 1904. Can you imagine someone from America visiting Israel in 1904? Yeah. Tamach v'mefalim rabim. He supported many causes. Heim b'yishuv hayashan, whether it's the Yishuv hayashan, heim b'yishuv hachadash ba'aretz. He was a very, very generous to many Jewish causes in Eretz Yisrael, who showed the Bikkur Nois B'Shnas 1912. Okay.
The city in Israel,
Yeah.
Tanya, is named after him.
Really?
Yeah, Nathan Strauss.
Okay, I didn't know that.
I think so.
Okay. So basically, this visit to Israel saved his life. Yeah. We bring in, ex-historians to the Shiur. Okay. Oid Paul B'chai Yatzir Yehudim America. He also was very active with American Jewry. V'kien ke he was appointed to sit on the Congress HaYehudi HaAmerikani. So he sat on the World Jewish Congress for 1920 to 1924. Who hisate lotze sabach of Isidore and L'tzir al Titanic. He planned on traveling with Isidore on the Titanic. After all, that was a trip for the rich and famous. But his trip to Israel extended. It went beyond its anticipated date. It saved his life. He was spared the fate of his brother and sister-in-law. Okay. So Strauss higia arza b'reisha shnas tafresh ayin beis. He came to Israel in the beginning of 1912. K'dei lahasriz u'le'asayeh liyishuv hayashon v'hachadash. In order to donate, in order to support the various settlements in Israel. But kufazu yised es tachanas habriyas ha'ivris Strauss. He set up some kind of company, the Israeli Health Club. I don't know, like the New Earth Health Club, the Strauss Israeli Health Club. Okay. Ba'haisa mechalka lemalaria lemachlas einayim. It was a clinic, basically. For the swampland there, there were Jews who were affected by malaria and various eye ailments. Hatachana shachna karv l'shar hachadash. Okay, l'maisha nishar nev to kobi yishlayim lo yichaz las la'flag alaniya kfi shetachnan. He was not able to go on the boat as he planned. Now, this story became publicized first, as told over by Harav Chasr of Chaim David Wilhelm, Ish Yerushalayim. He lived in the old city. What happened? Kfar Erev Melchamas Olam Harishona Shasasa Nir Yisrael Es Roiv Koisat Harela. Already before the First World War, the poverty-stricken Jews suffered terrible misfortune. All financial aid was cut off. Hayoker ha'amir v'hamechsanim hischilu hisroikein. There was terrible inflation, and all the storehouses were empty, and tragedy was great. Rav Shlomo Rata, there was a Yid by the name of Shlomo Rata, was one of the precious Jews of Jerusalem. Baroso es hanatzrachim aram hazakukim matavshel echad b'yom. There were so many people that all they wanted was one piece of food a day, or even a cup of tea a day. So what did he do? Pasach b'masir nefesh beis tavshel. He opened up something like a soup kitchen in the city, near the Iron Gate, in one of the courtyards near the Kaisel HaMaravi. At that exact time, Strauss came to Yerushalayim, and among the collectors was this Reb Shlomo. Reb Shlomo Rata went to Nathan Strauss, and he asked Nathan Strauss for a donation for a soup kitchen. Fine. Strauss did not give him a clear answer. So days passed. Halach Mar Strauss b'sam te'usa shel Yerushalayim. He's walking through the alleyways of Yerushalayim, and he meets a young man, Chaim David Wilhelm. So Strauss is very friendly to him, and he asks him to take him to the soup kitchen. So this Yerushalmi kid is sort of awestruck. Here you have a man, he's probably very well dressed, he looks like a gentleman, he looks like a wealthy man, doesn't look like somebody who needs soup from a soup kitchen, and he didn't know what to say, so Strauss asked him again. So this Wilhelm, Chaim David Wilhelm, showed him the way. So the gentleman turns to him and he says, come with me, show me where it is, you'll be my escort. So he followed suit, and they both come to the place, and Chaim David brings him to the entrance, and Strauss doesn't leave him. They both enter hand in hand, and Moshivim Osoliyad Shulchanim Kol HaOrchei Prachi. They take them to the table with all the itinerant guests, and they bring him a hot meal. And the warmth of this meltzar, the warmth of the waiter who brought him the food, really appealed to Nathan Strauss. And he stood up and he asked for the owner of this institution. So Reb Shlomo Rata comes, and Strauss says, I like your place. And he donated a substantial sum to Shlomo Rata's soup kitchen in Yerushalayim. Okay. So days, weeks pass, and Strauss is planning to leave Eretz Yisrael to travel to England to get onto the Titanic together with his brother Isidore. And he became very ill. He's bedridden, can't move. And he was very upset that he could not get on the trip of a lifetime, and only later he realized it saved his life. Okay, so what happened? Where was Strauss at the time of the disaster? He's in Eretz Yisrael. And all the newspapers were reporting that Strauss came to Israel to fulfill his pledges and help out the poverty-stricken Jews. Now, despite finding out about this disaster and the loss of the life of his brother and sister-in-law, his plans were not foiled, and he continued on his philanthropy mission. And sort of in the heels of his being saved, he increased his donations. However, he became very depressed because of this disaster. He became very broken. And until many months after the disaster, when people would come and ask him for money, he would say, this is not really a good time, maybe come back later. I don't have the peace of mind right now to think about it. Okay, so what happened? So he comes back to America, and Rosham Nathan Strauss Hatzhara. What's Hatzhara? No, Hey Tzadi Hey Reish Hey. I guess it means he wrote an article. And he describes the Kiddush Hashem that his brother and sister-in-law made in the eyes of all the Goyim, who basically they gave first priority to others to get onto lifeboats, and they themselves were not saved. I'm sure they could have used their clout to get a spot. The language that he uses is a very moving language. He talks about sort of the brotherhood of mankind, and this is what he writes. And one of the things we'll discuss is, did they do the right thing? Is one allowed to give priority to somebody else? After all, we say, Chayecha Kaidem, your life takes precedence. Well, he writes, Nathan Strauss writes as follows. Tsel anan shal atzev tolo maser slibi. A cloud of sadness conceals my heart. Ad kedei kach she'em b'sharusa da, I can't even talk. When he wrote Zanatzos Adam Zu Kedei Labias Hiru Liba, I want to articulate the thoughts of my heart. Be'ikvos hakamos ha'atzuma shel divrei nichum shenichmo isanu mikol katzei tevel. In response to the incredible amount of consolation that we receive from all over the world, Keren Or Shon Nechama Ani Moitzi Mitoch HaChoshech, I see a ray of light of consolation from darkness. V'hu b'choshish Yehudei v'Yehudim heim sheherul chol olam dugmal ha'krava atzmis l'man azulas. I'm consoled by the fact that the Jewish people showed the world what self-sacrifice means. Heroism, ve'avas hadadis. They showed the world what it means to be a hero, what it means mutual love. So he says, Miyamei shamati esamusuk ben anosim ava notzres. I always would hear the expression, the Christian love. But I always looked for it, not finding that it exists. I figured when I get to Palestine with the gathering of the various religions, there I would see it. Ulam chazarti misham yoyser asam mi shechashavti sham hasina ben adasas goya va'ayuma. I thought I would see the love of all the religions over there, but there the hatred is even more dominant. Chayalim Turkiya me'adasu esalamis shomrim fatrolim saviv hakever notzri kidei lahafre ben hanitzim shel hayivanim leben hakatalim. There, the Turkish officers of Islamic belief, they guard and patrol around the kever of Oisei Ish to separate between the Greek Orthodox and between the Catholics. Hari hanotzus do gelas v'hadarecha kamocha. The banner of Christianity is, love thy neighbor, and if anything, they are the epitome of internal strife. Okay. He says, "Ba'ason ha-Titanic kol hatzar hisrachis ba'achva lamaves. Im yeshna efshar klal l'kayim achva l'chayim." He says in the tragedy of Titanic, people showed the brotherhood in death. Do you think maybe people could show brotherhood in life? Why wait till death to learn this lesson? Okay. Just as a conclusion, he points out the Mesiras Nefesh that Nathan Strauss had for the Jews of Yerushalayim. What did he do? Nathan Strauss sold his yacht to be able to give more money to the starving Yerushalayim, and his wife sold her clothing also to be able to give more tzedakah. Well, in the year 1928, there was an earthquake in Eretz Yisrael, and the Strauss family again sent considerable donations to support Jews in Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi, all of this history and all of this seemingly interesting details, which is not limud atar in and of itself, is all to get us, and the hechsher mitzvah to get us till this point, and that is to discuss one of the most difficult areas in halacha, and that is hilchos iguna, because it is well known that if a woman loses her husband, and we don't know where he is, we don't know if he's alive, we don't know if he's dead, and the possibility of him being alive really puts her in a very untenable situation. She could remain all by herself, lonely, isolated her whole life. And this is a very difficult inyan of halacha, because on the one hand, it's one of the most serious aspects of halacha. Eishes ish. You're not dealing with the man. So if the man doesn't know about his wife's whereabouts, okay, so what's he violating if he remarries? He's violating cherem d'Rabbeinu Gershon. But on the other hand, if the woman is an Eishes ish is from the chamurais, and more than that, if she has a child, the child will be a mamzer. So on the one hand, it's one of the strictest areas of halacha. On the other hand, we find throughout Chazal, mishum iguna hekilu rabbanon, that because of the sensitivity of the topic, very often the rabbanon are mekel. So we have to discuss now is the sugya in Masechta Yevamos, Daf Kuf Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph and Kuf Chaf Aleph Amud Beis, the sugya of mayim she'en lahem soif, water that has no end. We'll get into this more on Friday, Mirz Hashem. But typically, if someone is in a situation where you know they die, so you could testify. A woman who has one witness that her husband died is allowed to remarry. Even though normally ein davar shab'arva pachas mishnayim, but if a woman has one aid that her husband is dead, she's allowed to get married. The Gemara says chazaka isha daiku minsaba. There's a chazaka that a woman will do her due diligence and investigate the authenticity of the witness, and she won't get married until she's confident that her husband in fact is dead. But the question is, when we deal with drowning, very hard for somebody to testify that the person died. The only testimony we can have is they were on the boat and the boat sank. So Marv Rabbi say, even if you have a witness, we'll see in the Gemara Nivamis, that a person drowned, that a person went under the water and stayed under the water long enough that they cannot live, the woman is still not allowed to remarry. Why? Because you didn't see that they died. If you see a guy dead like a doorknob, so now you can testify that he died. But just because you see somebody that you feel they've been underwater long enough that they should die, you cannot. The woman cannot get married. Why? So it depends. If it's mayim sheyesh lahem soif, if the water is a finite area, and you see the coast on the other side, and as far as you know, the guy didn't come on the other side of the coast, and he stayed there long enough that he would not be able to survive. Under those circumstances, a woman could remarry. But mayim shein lahem soif, which means infinite waters, that you can't see the horizon on the other end, you can't see the seacoast on the other end.
Yeah, talking about
No, we're not dealing. The depth doesn't matter. But
if you have a lake that's 1,000 feet deep, but you could see both coasts, that wouldn't be Mayim Shein Lahem.
well, if you see the guy, if you could see both coasts, and you see the guy didn't go out on the other side, and he stayed there long enough that he can't make it, then you could testify that he's dead. However, Mayim she'ein lahem soif, it's in a way it's counterintuitive. If Mayim she'ein lahem soif, water that has no end, so just like it has no end, you can't see the other end, and since you can't see the other end, you never know. Maybe they came across a board, maybe they came across a piece of wood, and they hung on to it, and they went up the other side, and you don't know about their whereabouts. You see, if the coast is apparent, so you know, you don't see them going up on the other side. But if the coast is not apparent, Mayim she'ein lahem soif loy tinase, the woman cannot get remarried. So if you have a witness, two witnesses, that a person went under in endless water, the woman cannot get remarried. So it would seem that Nebuch, the women, and we said most of the survivors were women, and if their husbands did not get onto a lifeboat, I mean, in all likelihood, how in the world would they have made it? But nevertheless, the Gemara says, Mayin she'ein lahem soif loy tinase. But the good news is, the imnises, if she did marry, loy teitze. She doesn't have to get divorced. Why? Apparently, that means that the Isser to get remarried is only an Isser D'Rabbanan. Why would it only be an Isser D'Rabbanan? Because Roiv would say there's no way in a million years the husband is alive. But the Rabbanan are Choishesh for an unlikely scenario, which does not allow her to get married. However, if she does get married, she doesn't have to get divorced.
What about children? Are they mamzerim?
Well, if the husband comes back, they're mamzerim. If the husband doesn't come back, are they mamzerim and Rabbanan? No. Pashtas not.
She can't marry a Kohen, right? That's considered an almana, right?
Kohen can marry an almana. She can't marry anybody.
No, I mean, but if she does marry,
So Kohen can marry an almana.
but she can marry a Kohen.
No, she can't marry anybody.
Go out. No. But we say if she does marry, they'll take
Yeah, there's no nafkamina between a Kohen and a Yisrael. So we have this Gemara in Yavamis that says that Mayim she'en lahem saif loy tinase ve'im tinase loy teitze. The problem is, so that makes things a little bit easier. Why? Because that means we're only dealing with an Isser D'Rabbanan. So we're only dealing with an Isser D'Rabbanan, it will be much easier to find kulas on an Isser D'Rabbanan. If it would be an Isser D'Oraisa, you can't budget. You can't add kulas to an Isser D'Oraisa. If min ha-Torah, a woman whose husband drowned in Mayim she'en lahem soif, if min d'Oraisa she can't get married, the women who survived Titanic would be stuck forever. If it's only an Isser D'Rabbanan, then there's what to work with. The problem, though, is there's a Mishnah in Gittin on Daf Chavches, and the Mishnah says that Sfina that got lost on the sea, the Mishnah says we give the man the chumras of being alive and the chumras of being dead, which mean that if a ship was I'll read to you the exact lashon, and we'll see this in Meretz Hashem more on Friday. The Mishnah in Gittin Daf Chavches says like this: Svina she'avda bayam, noisnin aleim chumrei chayim v'chumrei mesim, which means it's a suffix d'oraisa, and the woman not only cannot get married, but even if she does, she would have to get divorced. Because it's an Issa D'Oraisa, because we really suspect the husband is alive. So basically you have a stira between the Mishnah and Gittin, which says that if a boat gets lost, the husband is suffix alive, suffix dead mid'oraisa, and the Gemara in Yavamis that says loy tinase, she can't get married. Then this says loy teitze, but if she did get married, she could stay because it's only in Isser D'Rabbanan. One of the ways to answer the stira is the way the Rashba learns, and that is there's a difference between if you see somebody drown and if you see a boat get lost. that if you see someone drown, then midairaisa she could get married. Midrabanan she can't get married, and if she did, she could stay that way, because you saw the person drown. So the likelihood of them being alive is very little, and it's only a drabanan to get remarried. However, if all you see is a boat go down, you didn't even see them drown, then midairaisa it's a suffix.
Even if you saw him get on the boat.
Even though you know he's on the boat. But if you didn't see him drown, all you saw was the boat go down, but you don't know about his whereabouts, then midairaisa she can't get remarried. Now the case of the Titanic, be very difficult to have edus that the person actually drowned. Probably all you'll have is testimony that the boat went down. If that's all you have, then these women are in a very, very difficult situation, because in such a case, it would probably be a Isser D'Oraisa to get married. So that's what we're going to discuss, Mirz Hashem, in the second part of the Shiur. So that's one way to reconcile the contradiction between the Gemara Yavamis and the Mishnah in Gittin. Or maybe all the Mishnah in Gittin means is that if you see a boat in a terrible storm and you don't know the whereabouts of the boat, then it's a suffix d'oraisa whether she could get married. But if you see the boat drown, then that's akin to seeing the person drown, and then in that case it would only be a suffix d'rabanan. Here are some other things to think about. Maybe all of these chshashos are only back in the day when there's no technology. And if you don't know about someone's whereabouts, they're very possibly alive. But now we live in the age of technology, and if someone would be alive, you would probably hear from them. They would give you a call. They'd send you a telegram. Especially Bisman Hazeh. What are the likelihoods of somebody being alive and we don't know where they are? What they got, they're on some desert island somewhere, They have no service. They got to a place where there's no service. Okay, but now it's, so they died, right? But to have somebody in a matzav, to be somewhere for an extended period of time, and you don't hear from them, are we worried about that? Are we not worried about that? So these are all factors to take into consideration. And this is one of the main objectives of Poskim throughout the ages, taking care of agunos, women, especially. It's one thing if a woman was already married and had a family, but nebuch, if it's a young girl, a young woman, to remain the rest of her life isolated, stranded, without the potential to be able to remarry, that's a very difficult circumstance. So Rabbi Say,
it's not as if this comes up with the IDF. Sometimes if they snatch.
Okay, good, right. So, but we're specifically talking about under the circumstance of water, Mayim Shein Lahem Seif. Okay, Rabbi Say, we'll pick it up Friday, Mirz Hashem. Shkaya.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.